بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Respected brothers and sisters, welcome all to Prophetic Paths weekly class here in the Hub building on Commercial Road 255 to 259. Commercial Road, for those who are watching online who perhaps don't know the address. We, as Bani Adam, as human beings in this life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us in this life to compete. But we are not competing against one another, we are actually competing against our nafs. And one should consider themselves in a race. And in that race, we are judged by how we perform, and not how the person in the lane next to us, to our right or left, performs. And so sometimes we feel encouraged when the race has many participants. And sometimes we feel a bit disheartened when the race has few participants. In reality, the distance is the same regardless of how many people are participating and running the race. And we will still be judged according to our individual performance. So when we attend, regardless of how many people there are in attendance or how many people there aren't in attendance, a person should consider that this is their race that they are running, and they will be judged based on how they end and not how the other person finishes. And so, as we always remind one another that from the etiquettes and from the mindset, really, one should approach these gatherings, and any gathering really, is that the advice being given is for me. Imagine that I'm in the race now, and I'm being instructed on how to perform. And when I'm told how to run, how to uh, correct my form and my posture and my gait, etc., it's not for the person next to me; it's for me. So we're all in this race of the dunya, but the thing is that the finish line is not determined by us, but by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at any time. And so that is why we continually come here week after week in order to remember what the reality of this life is, the reality of our participation in this life, what it is exactly. And so do bear that in mind. And before we begin, obviously, we are reminded to correct our intention and to direct ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, as we always begin with a short tilawah of the Quran, I'm looking at you because I've given you specific instruction for tilawah of the Quran. No. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. صدق الله. So before we begin, will listen, inshallah, to a short nasheed in order for us to, during the duration of the nasheed, direct ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to correct our mindset, the mindset that we mentioned in the beginning before the bayan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد. السلام عليكم يا نبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. All praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all peace and blessings are upon the final Prophet, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and his family and his companions, and those who follow in his way. Now the Mashayikh follow the path of Muhammad. They mentioned that in this life, a person is born 7 times. So for those who might be expecting, you might be familiar with the first birth, or know somebody who is expecting, or know somebody who has recently given birth, that you know the first birth is referring to the physical birth. That is the birth in which every human being that is born into this world experiences. It shares the living existence with all other physical beings. So that's defined by things like eating, drinking, sleeping, marrying, education, having children, sightseeing, fighting, etc. Now, if you live your life aspiring for these things, meaning to have nice clothes, to have food on your table every day, to have water, clean water every day, to have nice houses, have children, to have a family. Nobody will say something like that you wouldn't want. But if you've lived your life and you've obtained all of these things, and you think you've achieved something, then the Mashaykh have said that actually you've only really achieved what animals do. Because animals do all of these things and more. In fact, me and you can't even say we've lived a life of an animal. Because animals also worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They also worship in their own form. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says that the croaking of a frog, even that is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's the way that the frog remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for me and you, we can't even say we've lived a life of an animal. Because even the animal knows its purpose and worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the first one. The second verse happens the day you ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? What is in this? What am I? You know, notice we're not finding many animals in the animal kingdom which suddenly want to decide to be another species, do we? The elephant doesn't wake up one day and say, no, tiger. Or zoos across the country aren't in jeopardy because now the giraffe is a hippo and demands to be brought up with hippos. No, that's not the case. Meaning that even animals are clear about who and what they are. It's the human being that is confused about who they are. And so the day you ask, who am I and what is my role, is the day you are intellectually born. Now, intellectual birth is not just defined by this question, it's defined by 4 others. So who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose of being here? I could have been on any planet, I could have been on any existence, but why am I here? What's special about this place? The third is, am I a created or am I something that lives forever? Did I create myself? And if I'm a created being, then who is that creator? Who are they? The next question is, well, if I know who I am, I know why I'm here, I know I'm a creator that created, then what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Why was I created? What function am I meant to serve? And finally, how do I achieve that purpose? These 5 aspects. Once you pursue these and gain answers to these and begin to fulfill your purpose, that is when you're intellectually born. Now the problem is most of us are not even living at this level. We're not living at this level. What we're doing is following the crowd. The crowd is saying, earn as much as possible. The crowd is saying, maximize your pleasure and just minimize your pain, as long as you're not harming anybody. The crowd is saying success is defined by having lots of things. A job, a successful career, many properties, the clothes that you wear, the places that you go, the number of holidays that you go within a year, the Instagram shots that you take on the beach. That's what we define as success. And the problem is, if you follow the crowd, then you will not experience this intellectual. There was an incident that happened in Turkey many years ago, and a mental asylum, about 50 patients escaped. The security system malfunctioned, and 50 patients escaped, and they escaped into the city. And so the governors came together and thought, we've got 50 mad people among the city. how on earth are we going to find these people, and how on earth are we going to protect others from being harmed by them? So they came up with an idea. The psychologists said, look, these people had psychosis and all sorts of conditions. They said, look, they're attracted to a certain sound. If you play this sound, what you'll end up finding is that they'll come towards you like bees are attracted to pollen. So they said, okay, we'll try it, see if it works. So what they did was they got this big van and they drove around the city, and just like an ice cream truck, they played this sound, right? They played this sound. So suddenly you saw droves of people following this van. So this van is driving around the city, and now you have these droves of people following this van. Now, they were able to continue to drive until a large group began to assemble into this van. So they ended up telling people to come onto this van. So these had loads of people coming onto this van. And so they were able to capture these people who escaped. And so when they went back to the mental asylum, they did a head count. And the officer who was doing the head count was really confused. He said that 50 people escaped. 50 people escaped the mental asylum. He goes, I've counted 150 people in the van. How did this happen? So one person said, maybe all crazy people that we think. Maybe these people are also crazy, but we don't detect them. We didn't know. So they asked them, why are you here? Why 50 extra, 100 extra? Why are you here? They said, oh, because we saw loads of people following this van. So we wanted to see what it was about, so we also followed them as well. So the Mashaykh say that following the time, following the people, following the culture, just going with the flow. Some people say, oh, I don't need to ask these smart questions. I can just go with the flow. That's like these people, that you'll be accompanied by those whom you follow, who you surround yourself. And so just like these insane people, you might not think they're insane. But like I said, look at the life in which we're living. It's no different, not much more than what animals have lived. If anything less. So aspiring to that is doing yourself a disservice. So to recap, there are seven times a human being is born in their existence. The first is you're born into this world and you have your physical existence. You share it with all animals and creatures. The second, the intellectual birth. It's when you ask the most existential question you can possibly ask. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the role in this world? Who is my creator? What is my purpose and how do I achieve that? And then you go on to achieve it. Now the third birth. The third birth is the emotional birth. It's the birth that happens when you've achieved these two things. The first is that your attachment, your emotional attachment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes more dominant than any other attachment, emotional attachment you have to the world or any people within the world. The second is that you're able to achieve this emotional stability. Why? Because you no longer become interested and have desires, meaning you do have desires, everybody has desires, but you become disinterested in the world, you become disinterested. Yes, everybody has desires to eat and hunger and intimacy and companionship. Those don't go. But those are so reduced that the desire for akhirah now outstrips them. So it's neither here or there whether you get those desires fulfilled here or not. It's not the end of your world. It's just a minor inconvenience. And so the emotional birth is signified that when you've achieved these two states, now you've achieved some form of stability, emotional stability. Many people are emotionally ruining themselves because they either attach themselves to things that will use and abuse. That's the problem. When you attach yourself to anything you attach yourself to will have one quality. And when I say attach, it doesn't mean you can't be connected to something. It means that thing has control over you. That's what an attachment is. If I say, you know, my arm is attached to my body, that means my arm can't detach from my body. It's restricted to wherever my body goes, my arm goes. And so an attachment, once you give something an attachment, it has control over you. And so if you give yourself to people, if you give yourself to your job, if you give yourself to your children, if you give yourself to anybody else other than Allah, then know that they will use and abuse you, because that is the nature of things. That is the nature of people. Allah created things to serve us, but they did not create us to serve things. So the emotional birth is experienced when you've been able to achieve these two states. So what number is that? We said we had the physical birth, we had the intellectual birth, we have the emotional birth, and now the fourth birth. The fourth birth is when you're born again, is the spiritual birth. The spiritual birth takes place in your life. And the spiritual birth happens when you achieve your purpose in this life. And that's signified by two main qualities. The first is that you have a beautiful relationship with Allah. You have a beautiful relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you are always in His commands and His obedience. And that you're in His presence. And the second is that you have a beautiful relationship with the creation. That means you have a beautiful relationship with people who are good to you. That means you have a beautiful relationship with people who are not good to you. And that also means you have a beautiful relationship with yourself. Many people can't even stand themselves, which is why they can't be left alone. Because that's when you unfortunately experience what you want. Restlessness. That you just want to escape yourself. That's why you need to be entertained. They can't be left with their own thoughts. But that's what you invest in. That's your mind, that's your emotions, that's your thoughts invested, that's coming out to spill. So the spiritual birth is signified by these qualities, and it can be achieved by every single person, provided you pursue the how. How do you achieve that? Now there was one spiritual master who really signifies this emotional birth and spiritual. His name was Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahmatullahi alayhi. Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahmatullahi. He was once he was sitting and he was in a dars, and a man comes to him and says, "Oh, Sayyidi, we've just been informed that there was a fire in the port, and all of the ships were burned, including yours." And Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahimahullah, he says, he looks down, and then he looks up, and he says, Alhamdulillah. The dars continues. And later, the same man, he says, "Oh, Sayyidi, good news. That all of the ships of earth, actually yours were saved. Yours weren't." Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahimahullah, he looks down, and he looks up, he says, Alhamdulillah. And the students who were in the class, they said, Sayyidi, why did you say Alhamdulillah? We can understand why you said Alhamdulillah the second time, because you found out your ships were not destroyed. But why did you say it the first time? He said, the first time I looked at my heart, and I saw, when I was informed that I had lost my ships, I said Alhamdulillah, because there's goodness in every circumstance. But the second time, I did not say Alhamdulillah to find out that I had gained something. My ship wasn't destroyed. He said, I praised Allah, and when I looked at my heart, I didn't see any change. I didn't see any change. I thought, oh, yeah, that ship that I was destroyed, actually it was preserved. I didn't see that elation in me that, I've gained something. Meaning that I saw no other attachment. So what Sayyidina Dabbagh al-Filani is explaining is that this is one of the signs that when a person develops maturity, this is some of the signs and fruits of embarking on the prophetic path, that you are trained on how to train your emotions such that you attach yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the things that you deal with, the food that you eat, the clothes that you wear. Nobody says you can't use these things, but you use these things in a manner that you use that in a manner that connects you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like these things are vehicles. The food that you eat, the clothes you wear, the things that you aspire for, the things that you use, they're all vehicles. And vehicles, what's the purpose of the vehicle? Is to take you from point A to point B, not just to look good in your own driveway. And so these are vehicles. What we're doing is we're sitting on the things, and we're getting attached to the thing. It's just like somebody can have a really nice car, but if it's in his driveway, he's attached to it, but he hasn't gone anywhere with it. It hasn't benefited. And so that's like the things that we use. They're just sitting there. But using them is using them to get to Allah, using that food to get to Allah. You might be thinking, what do you mean using that food to get to Allah? Well, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was eating, what was his dua? What was his dua? He praises Allah, that, oh Allah, you have fed it. You have fed it. Now the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, obviously, let's say the family had provided the food, obviously there was a meal. But the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during that meal, he alayhi salam, again, insight into psychology, that in his psychology, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is teaching us something very interesting. That he alayhi salam saw that it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was feeding him. And so on the course of purification, which we teach here, the fourth stage of purification is purification of the nafs. And the nafs is the entity in which desires stem from, emotions stem from, attachments stem from. And you're trained on practically how to redirect every desire you have for a lawful thing. For example, there's water. We all have desire for thirst, desire for replenishment. But how, whilst drinking that water, you're trained on how to connect to Allah. So instead of being attached to the drink or attached to Allah, you developed and strengthened that attachment to Allah, was attaching yourself on the meanings. The problem is we're all people of attachment of the meanings. We don't know how to attach to Allah. So the knowing how is key, because mentioning the definitions alone doesn't benefit. So this is the emotional birth and the spiritual birth. Now, everybody has this opportunity to achieve this spiritual birth. It's not something that you think, oh, actually, spiritual birth is when we die and we become Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. To signify this, there is a very specific type of dare. And it's a dare, and this dare has a very special musk that it produces. And it produces it near its stomach. It's produced within the dare. And this musk is a very expensive musk. Now this dare, it lives its life smelling this fragrance. Right? It lives its life smelling this fragrance. But it doesn't know where this fragrance is coming from, because it's coming from within itself. So what it does is spend its entire life and existence searching for the source of this fragrance. It goes into the wilderness. It goes into the forests. It goes to even human territory. It goes into the mountains, all searching for this musk, never knowing that this musk was within it, until it dies. Maybe it falls off a cliff, maybe it gets hit by a car, maybe it dies within the wilderness, maybe it gets eaten by a predator. And it dies not knowing where the smell, this musk comes from. And the Mashayikh say that this is actually being you. We are like there, that we have this thing within us. And this musk is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have this connection. It's through our spirits, the ruh that is contained within the body. And everybody has a connection, but what we end up doing is we end up searching. We search for that connection with others. We search for that connection in our relationship. We search for that connection in our jobs. We search for that connection in our relationships. And like this there, you end up being betrayed and left for dead, not knowing that you were given this within you. And so the spiritual birth gives us that goal. That goal is that we can all achieve that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can all achieve it. And we can all achieve this beautiful relationship with creation, irrelevant of how they treat you, irrelevant of who you are. You have a beautiful relationship with yourself and you have a beautiful relationship with others. If they give harm to you, you respond to goodness. If people break ties with you, you are able to bond with them. And if people harm you, then you forgive them. Now, we said how many births were there? 7. How many have you got? Okay. The physical birth, the intellectual birth, the emotional, the spiritual. The 5th birth. The 5th birth is the 2nd birth. And that is the day that you die. The day that you die, you now enter Barzakh, the world of the graves. And what is the world of the graves? It's an isolated existence where you are lowered down into your grave. And the Mashayikh say there are 3 questions you can ask yourself today to know how that life is going to be. Firstly, if you want to know your state in that grave, ask yourself, what state are you creating for others? If you're creating hell for others, if you're creating destruction for others, if you're violating others, other people's rights, then know that that's the life that you're gonna have in that existence, in that birth. The second question is, who are you gonna spend time with? You think, okay, it's isolated. Who will I spend time with? You will spend time with those people and the company of those who you most spend time with here. If you're spending time here among good company, among company that reminds you of Allah, among company that reminds you of the Prophet ﷺ, then we can have hope in Allah that we are joined with those who also remind us that. And finally, how will you spend your time there? So you've got who will you spend your time with? What state am I in? Who will I spend? What will I do in that time, that downtime that I have? Well, the Mashayikh say very simply, ask yourself, what do you spend that time in? When you have that time alone here, that nobody can see you, how do you spend that time? And if you spend that time heedlessness, in that time committing sin, that time doing things that you know that if you show others will be ashamed of you and you'd be ashamed of yourself, then know that that is also the time that you'll be spending in that grave. That will manifest itself. So this is the 5th birth. It's called the 2nd birth, the 2nd life, which is Barzakh. The 6th birth is the day of judgment, the rebirth. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect every human being, that the spirit and the body become joined again. That you are given the freedom of choice once again. But this time, this is the Maliki Yawmiddin. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Now, Allah is in control. And this is signified by the moment everybody will know who everybody else is. Up till that point, nobody really knows. Firstly, you don't know who you are. And secondly, you don't know who anybody else is. But that day is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, these are from Asabiqun, Sabiqun. These are the foremost of the foremost. This is where the prophets will be shown. This is where the awliya Allah will be shown who they are. One person asked one of my teachers, they said, why is it that people will come to the pious and righteous? Why will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it clear and declare who those pious and righteous people are? And that will instruct people to go to them. He said that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to show the character of those who are beloved to Allah. It's a day of show. It's a day of revelation. It's a day where you will realize who you are. And so for those who did not pursue in this life, that process of purification, process of enlightenment, process of transformation, then know that you will be the most disadvantaged on that day. Think about it. There are people who on that day, they will lie to Allah. They will say to Allah, Ya Allah, we didn't do this. What does that mean? That means they still have the freedom of choice, but they're still not trained on how to use it. They're saying, oh Allah, we didn't do this, and then their hands will testify against them and say, no, no, you did do this. Their tongue will testify against them. Their body will testify against them. Why? Because they're saying one thing and their body's saying another. So this is the 6th time that you're born. And finally, the 7th birth is the moment in which a servant witnesses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They mentioned that moment where you witness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, one of the aspects of love and developing love is when you listen to somebody, you can fall in love with them. And in some ways, all of us experience that. We heard Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the word experience. When Allah mentions us, we said, that Allah says, who is your Lord? We said, Ya Allah, we verily will testify. You are our Lord. And so the Mashayikh say that because we heard Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the next thing that we want is to see Allah. And that is only preserved paradise. And so we go through all of these existences, we go through all of these stages of living and birth to actually the pinnacle is that moment of witnessing Allah. And I mentioned the stages of Jannah are only really different according to not just the material wealth of the things you get, but in fact, Sayyidina Abdul Qadir Allah says that in the levels of Jannah, in the levels of paradise, actually as you traverse through them, there's less and less material, there's less and less wealth, there's less and less attraction. And actually, as you attain the highest levels, it's just the vision of Allah. And that Friday is marked by a special day because it's the day in which every Christ will see Allah. And those who had a closer relation with Allah and a more desire to have that relation with Allah, they will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different frequencies. Some 7 times, some once, every now and again. But the highest would be those who were in a constant witnessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's beauty. And it's mentioned in that moment, that is the rebirth. That is when you are born, and that is called the eternal birth. Because that state continues forever and ever and ever. And there is no order that comes upon you. You know, when you say something forever and ever, if you eat the best, your most favorite food, you think about your most favorite food. If you think about eating it forever, it becomes attractive in it. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah never ends. Knowing Allah never ends. Witnessing His sifat never ends. Witnessing His manifestations, representations, His beauty never ends. And so that moment of eternal birth, that's when you really end that moment. And I leave you with this final story. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that there are people who they enter, come at the gates of paradise, and the malaika come and say, "Oh, beloved ones to Allah, enter paradise." They said, "We didn't worship Allah in paradise." So the angels are confused. They go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Ya Allah, your servants have shackled themselves, refused to enter paradise. What do we do?" And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Tell them that my meeting with them is in paradise." So they come back and they say, "Oh servants, enter paradise." They say, "No, we didn't worship Allah for paradise." And then they say, "Enter paradise because your meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there." And it's mentioned in the hadith that they run in such a manner. They run towards them, they run. Because that's what they worship Allah for. That's why they embarked on this journey. That's why they went in. So we look at all aspects of birth. We see our physical, our intellectual, our emotional, our spiritual, and then the birth factor. And now you should think to yourself, if I am living my existence just the physical, how short am I selling myself? Because what Allah has assigned to me is the eternal birth. And if I rob myself of that, I am only myself to blame. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who embark on this one-way journey. But it is the most amazing, the most insightful, the most beautiful journey any being will embark upon in their life. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who firstly remove ourselves from just aspiring for the things of this world, but also facilitates for us the journey to reach their closeness and pleasure and to experience that spiritual birth in this lifetime of living. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة وسلام على المرسلين. Inshallah, we have 5 minutes. If anyone has any questions,
How do we have thoughts of what happens after the day of judgment?
Sorry, say that again. Right. So the sisters asked, how do we know through the hadith and revelation what is happening on the day of judgment? The day of judgment hasn't happened yet. It's very straightforward because the knowledge of Allah, which was revealed upon the knowledge of the prophets, because time is a creation. Time is a creation. It's like table is a creation. So it means it has a beginning and an end. And so therefore it's a sequence. Just like this table leg has a sequence. There's a bottom of it and there's a top of it. So similarly, time also, it has a sequence. It has a beginning, it has an end. And the knowledge of the prophets, the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously is out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is outside of that. So they're able to determine and describe events that happen in the future in spite of us. Me and you, we are in time. So we are still experiencing, making our choices. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually is a very amazing blessing because the Quran mentions many events that happen. And in the hadith as well, that happen on the day of judgment, so that we are informed today. So we are not among the people who come into that day of judgment and said, we didn't know this. Oh no, we didn't know this was going to happen. No, you were informed. This is what's going to happen. This is also, like for example, the whole khutbah, the whole speech of Shaitan is documented. What he will say on that day, what he will say to people. Why? Because Allah wants to document this to say, look, you're somebody who sold yourself out in this world. I'm telling you through revelation that this is what's going to happen. So you have to be a real fool taking all that. So this completely clears any possibility of the human being saying, no, no, we didn't know. No, you've been given clear instruction on what's going to happen even after this life. Does that make sense? So that's the reason why revelation is future events. Is there anything else? Okay, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta I seek forgiveness from attendees. I haven't done this topic justice, so we ask to overlook my shortcomings and any confusion with myself. And the goodness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanallah wa bihamdika. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Salamun ala al-mursalin.
For that insightful talk concerning the 7 birds and really what is known by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala far exceeds what we know, and there is no comparison whatsoever. And so it comes as no surprise to us that there will be more and more when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrects us, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the path of paradise and to His pleasure and to His closeness. Allahumma ameen. We move on to our final section now, which is the dhikr, inshallah. So, as we remind one another on a weekly basis, this is the loud dhikr. So we perform dhikr, inshallah, as a group and loud, and we follow the Brother Abdullah, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with his presence today and his return, alhamdulillah. And so follow the lead with a loud voice, but without going ahead of him. And when the lead stops for a breath or to take a sip of water, to continue with the dhikr that he is currently on. And we switch off the lights just to help with concentration and focus. And one should always remember the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with me and He is seeing me and He is hearing me. And imagination plays a large role, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His glorious book is full of description of events, people, scenarios, analogies for us to imagine. And so if a person is able to imagine, for example, the logo of Adidas, let's say, okay, but can't imagine something good, then really that person is deprived. And so imagination plays a huge role in allowing the person to focus and to connect. And this is, as our blessed Sheikh Ahmed Dabbagh reminded us on Monday, this is the essence, this is the haqiqah of Iman. The true nature, the reality of Iman is to be in the witness of at least, or to imagine what we consider to be or imagine to be the day of judgment. As he came across Sayyidina Haritha radiallahu anh, and he said to him, "How has your morning been, O Haritha?" And he said, "Asbahtu mu'minan haqqan ya Rasulullah." I have woken up as this morning I am a true believer, O Messenger of Allah. He said, "Every statement has a reality. What is the reality of your statement?" He said, I no longer have any desire for the dunya. And so I stay up by night in prayer and I fast during the day. And it is as though I see the throne of my Lord prominent before me. Bariza, not just like I can see in the distance. It is as though, not literally, of course, it is as though I can see the throne of my Lord. Bariza, prominent and so obvious and clear before me. And the people of paradise, in bliss and in reward and in pleasures, and the people of hellfire, it's as though I can see them in there being punished. So the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said to him, عرفت فلزم فلزم فلزم. You have known, meaning you know the reality now of Iman. You know the reality of Iman, so stick to this, stick to this, stick to this. And what did he start with? He started with his imagination. And so when we are told to imagine, one shouldn't find this strange. Really, it is strange that we can imagine the logo of Nike and Ralph Lauren. We can't even imagine the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sky above us in bright white light. What then about the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We can't even imagine his name, let alone the name. So, Brother Abdullah will perhaps go through some quick mindsets as well before the start of the dhikr. Barakallahu feekum.
So,
Omar Zayed.
as Sheikh Muhammad mentioned, the power of imagination isn't something to not take seriously. It's not something to take granted. The Mashaykh says, we use this faculty, this blessing from Allah, as a way of achieving purposes. And the purpose of this one technique that we are taught is to imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name above, shining in bright light, and from his blessed name our hearts are struck, and this light engulfs us and the gathering. And also to maintain concentration, to maintain focus, to remind us throughout beginning, middle, and end, and throughout the three keys that Allah is with me, Allah is watching me, Allah is hearing me. And for those who can progress a bit further than that, then you're encouraged to transfer, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله لا إله إلا هو الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا ما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما مولانا صل وسلم دائما أبدا مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على الحبيب خير الخلق كلهم على حبيب خير الخلق كلهم محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريق من رحمة العالمين هو الحبيب الذي ترجى الشفاعة لكل أمر من الله مقتحم مولاي صل وسلم أبدا على نبيك خير خلق عليه على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إلا الله لا إله 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 إلا الله 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 الله أنت المولى أنت الحق ليس المولى إلا هو أنت المولى أنت الحق ليس المولى إلا هو الله 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 أنت الهادي أنت الحق ليس الهادي إلا هو أنت الهادي أنت الحق ليس الهادي إلا هو الله 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 حسبي ربي جل الله ما في قلبي غير الله نوري محمد صلى الله لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه وهو الغفور الودود ذو العرش المجيد ذو الجلال والإكرام وهو الغفور الودود مجيد ذو الجلال والإكرام ذو الجلال والإكرام ذو الجلال والإكرام الله اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم اللهم آمين. يا ربنا كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك العظيم سبحان الله سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. اللهم يا رب سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اجمع بيننا وبين سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله في الدنيا قبل الآخرة. ربنا ظلمنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم أنت الحق وقولك الحق وعدك الحق والنبي حق يا أرحم الراحمين. Ya Allah, accept this gathering of Nasihah and dhikr. Allah, allow us to allow the guidance and Nasihah to penetrate our hearts so that we may not forget, and that you keep us always in the path of guidance and reminder. Allah. We are your forgetful servants, we are your sinful servants, and we are grateful for you, to you, for allowing us to come back to you, Arhamar Rahim. Allah, make the next week better than the past week, Arhamar. Make the next week that we attain a higher degree of Rahman. Allah bless our family. Allah, anybody with any difficulty, wherever it may be, their difficulty. Anybody who having relationship problems, any ties that have been broken, allow a way ties to be mended. Ya Allah, these past few days, under your decree, chosen to take many lives in Libya and Morocco. Allah, we see tragedy, but perhaps in your sight they are successful. Muhammad, we pray that they are successful. This life is fragile. We live in relative security, safety. We do not worry about many things that others worry about. Thank you, Muhammad, and forgive us for what we be thankful. Ya Arhamar. Allah, elevate their status. Allah, you have said that those who pass away, who are taken under natural disasters, they are given the rank of Shahada. Allah, give them the rank of Shahada. Allah, forgive us for the fitna and fasad that we cause upon the land and in the sea. Allah, forgive us and allow us to turn to you again and again and again. Those who have passed, forgive them, from our families, from our communities. Allah, forgive them. Allah, give them a portion of the dhikr and the gathering. Allah, you are kind, you are most wise, you are most merciful. Allah. We are ungrateful. Allah, forgive us. Allah. Allah bless our Master, Sayyidina Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his companions, and all the Anbiya, and Shuhada, Ya Arhamar Rahim, Allah. And those who are amongst your friends from now until the day of judgment, Allah bless them. Ya Arhamar Rahim, Allah bless our teachers and our mashayikh. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم تسليما سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله. It's been mentioned. Okay.
Yes, so as we always mention, we have time in our one-to-one, those course of purification, and also one-to-one people who are struggling with the same problems. They want some help, want some advice on which this is really like a private consultant. If you want to consult any Ustadh, so always get myself, inshallah. So please in front in the corner over there, or wherever you need. So if you're not on an announcement, to scan the QR code to be a member announcement. Inshallah, we hope to from here to see you next week. Or if you can find one, if you